Hello guys and welcome back to Dark Horse FM, and in today's video we are with the Brazil channel. No, that's not what I had in mind. Hello guys and welcome back to Dark Horse FM. In today's video we're going to be looking at one of the most iconic tactics that actually took football by storm, and I'm looking at the Brazilian national team. For example, I'm going to be using them to test this tactic because of course the tactic is the samba Ginga football that was very synonymous with Pele as well. The Brazil 1950s and 1960s tactic that they used to dominate the world back in the day. If you are a strong follower of football, you probably already know about this tactic, or at least you've probably heard about the Brazilian national team that won the World Cup multiple times. So in in Football Manager 2022, I am excited to be taking on international management. It's something I didn't really do previously in previous Football Manager games, but FM22, maybe because this year is a World Cup year, but I've actually taken the reins of international management so far, and I'm enjoying it as well. So in today's video, I'm aiming to replicate the Brazil tactic of the Pele era, the golden generation of Brazilian football, the Ginga. That's what they normally call it, and that's what I called it anyway. So in a bit to, I did a bit of research for this tactic as well, and obviously I wasn't born in the 1950s as well, and for football fans, you've probably heard about the tactic as well. So this tactic was dominant in the previous years, and Brazil went on to win the World Cup. The last time they won the World Cup was in 2002 against Germany, and they won multiple World Cup trophies. As you can see, the logo in the Brazil national team, they have 5. I think they are the one team that has 5 World Cup trophies to their name. So if you're new to the channel, remember to hit the like button for this video as well, and also to subscribe to the channel. We're going to go through the tactic in detail and how it's set up, and I'm going to set up the tactic on Football Manager 2022 as well. As you can see here, we're currently on the 9th of April 2023, so it means the World Cup has already passed and we've actually played the World Cup, and I'm going to tell you how the tactic worked out for me when I went on to play the World Cup, and also I will show you the tactic I used and how it evolved and what happened and how I got to the final tactic in the process. So hopefully it's not going to be a very long video. I'm going to go through the video step by step, but hopefully it's not going to be a long video. So looking at the history so far, we're just going to dive into competitions. Okay, Brazil are currently not in any competitions. That's strange. I haven't actually seen this in Football Manager before, the competition page being blank. That's interesting. So looking at the schedule so far, we can see that we're currently in 2023. As the last game I played was against Egypt, the finalist of the African Cup of Nations that just concluded in February. Yeah, we beat Egypt 9-0 with the final tactic I landed upon. So I'm going to take you back to how the previous year went, and then we had a game against Paraguay and Colombia. This is even before, so there's still more. Yeah, this is the first time we started using the tactic as well. So we went on a clean slate against Paraguay, Uruguay, and then Colombia and Argentina as well. We beat Argentina, beat Bolivia, beat Uruguay. We were struggling to concede goals, so we did really well. The tactic was solid defensively as well. Went on to beat Venezuela, and then in the following game, getting towards the end of the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers, we started losing games like Colombia, Uruguay, and Argentina. We struggled to win these last few games in the qualifying stage, and it was tricky for me because I felt, okay, maybe the tactic is starting to do badly, but I didn't change anything in the tactic because I wanted to be sure that it was working. And then we went on a whole month of holidays, and then we took on Croatia just before the World Cup started. I know Alisson Becker got injured in this World Cup as well, or before the World Cup, so we couldn't use him for the World Cup. And then the first game against Croatia, we ended up winning Croatia 3-1. We moved on to play against Serbia and Jamaica, and then the standout game for me was the Germany game where we beat them 4-0, and this was the first time I actually tweaked the tactics mentality from attacking to positive, and then it was a more patient approach, and then we ended up beating Germany 4-0. We went all the way into the quarterfinals, the semi-finals as well. We beat France after extra time. This was a very tricky game because I can't still tell how we managed to win this game as well. But the final against Germany was a bloodbath. We were losing 3-0 at some point. We were losing 3-0, right? Okay, they scored us 1-0 first, and then we equalized, and then they just took the game away from us by then. Karim Adeyemi had a swell day against our defense that time. This guy is probably one of the best players in the Football Manager as well. So in the final, we lost to Karim Adeyemi and Germany, right? 3-1, but then Roberto Firmino got a goal for us back during the closing periods of the game, and then we somehow managed to get one more goal, but it wasn't enough. We ended up losing the final. And tempted as I was to try and hold on, but no, it was a defeat, and a defeat was a defeat. But the tactic took us far enough into the final of the World Cup, and To be fair, I thought there might be some extra things that I could actually make to the tactic to try and improve it, but so far so good, it did quite well. So I'm going to show you how the tactic is set up and the system and the philosophy of the whole Ginga system and how it translates into Football Manager 2022. That's before the next game we now had against Egypt, and we ended up beating Egypt 9-0 with the updated, tweaked version of the tactic. So first off the bat, the Ginga system, from most of the research that I did, actually it revolves around a system that is a flat back four, but there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of creativity, and there's a lot of, fluidity and expressiveness in the tactic that actually confuses the opposition when you're actually playing against the tactic. So like I started just the way it's set up, it's a 4-4-2, it's a flat 4-4-2 with a back four, and I actually created two systems to try and replicate that tactic. The second system, this is the first system that you're seeing, or is this the second one? This is the second system. The first system that I created is this one, using an inverted winger and an inside forward on the other side. And I'm going to explain how the roles match up and the relationship between all these players. So in the first system, the super keeper is a super keeper on attack. I opted for this because of the modern goalkeeper. I'm actually going to be using Ederson and Alisson Becker, so it's not ideal to actually use a standard goalkeeper. Back in the 1950s and the 1960s, I don't think super keepers were really a thing. It was normally a standard goalkeeper, so you can go with a standard goalkeeper here, but I'm going with the super keeper because of Ederson and Alisson Becker. With the flat back four, the two central defenders often didn't venture too far forward. One of the other central defender was capable of running into the midfield with the ball and passing it to more creative players, but ideally both central defenders usually stayed at the back and passed the ball between themselves and also played long balls into creative players like Pele up front. And what's the other striker's name? Tostao? Yeah, but we'll get to the strikers in a minute. So for the central defenders, you can use two normal central defenders as opposed to ball-playing defenders, or you can use one ball-playing defender and one central defender. In the wing-back position, on the left-hand side, I used one wing-back on support duty. Ideally, this guy actually started off as a defender, that's a wing-back on defend duty, but then I realized that there was a disconnect between him and the player ahead of him, so I swapped him from midfield, from the wing back on support from the wing back on defense to wing back on support. That way he can offer more in the team. But using a wing back on defense, ideally this player and the two central defenders usually were the ones staying back. And then the wing back on the right hand side was always getting forward. That's because this player has been asked to get forward. He's supposed to offer the width in the side, because the inside forward ahead of him, the player ahead of him, is an inside forward, by the way. This guy's role is to actually cut inside and support the striker, while the wing back on the right hand side actually gets forward and offers the width and spreads the opposition on the right hand side. The two central midfielders, I was thinking more of the research was tied towards using two ball winning midfielders or two defensive midfielders, but then I realized that I landed up with one deep line playmaker and one box and one ball winning midfielder. This is the tactic that we actually used to give Egypt 9-0. But I started with two ball winning midfielders, and then I swapped from two ball winning midfielders to one ball winning midfielder and one defensive midfielder. You can see it in the tactic on this other setup. So this was Casemiro and Fabinho playing as the defensive midfielder on support duty. Ideally their role is to shuffle in between the defensive midfield and the central midfield positions. They're not always going to get forward and be in the attacking areas as well, but they're going to be in the midfield and just trying to stop the opposition's counter-attack, win the ball back and give it to more creative players. That is what the midfielders were for. But obviously the modern football requires more of midfielders, so I actually opted to use the deep line playmaker and then the ball winning midfielder. I kept the ball winning midfielder because of the player's ability to win the ball back effectively, and Casemiro has the ability to win the ball back effectively. If you see his aggression, for crying out loud, Casemiro 18, that's a lot. Now in attack, and this is where everything ties together perfectly, the white player on the left hand side is a winger on support duty. Forget that you're looking at inverted winger on support. The reason why I chose inverted winger on support, because Neymar is ideally very good at playing as an inverted winger on support as opposed to playing as a natural winger. When I use winger in Football Manager, I noticed that the player's role is just to get forward and cross the ball to the forwards, just to cross the ball, and that's not what this player was meant to be. Ideally, why I'm saying this player is a winger is because he's extremely wide. So this player's duty is to stay all the way out wide and stretch the opposition to the left hand side. Remember that the complete wing back on this other side, or the wing back on attack on this right hand side, is supposed to offer width in this area. So this player, as opposed to the he's actually supplementing the complete wing back that is playing on this other area here on the right hand side. So the winger on the left hand side is also asked to stay wider and stretch your position a lot more, and then create that width, and then allow the central midfielders to get to somewhat create chances in the middle. Why this is important is because the shadow striker, which is ideally the Pele role and the role that is the main outlet, the main creative outlet in the team, is going to be the one getting forward from the middle area. So with the stretching from the inverted winger on this, with the stay wider instruction on the left hand side and the complete wing back on the right hand side, also stretching the team to the right hand side, it creates space for the shadow striker to actually get in between. So that's what the system was all about. Spread your position in the wide areas and then create room for the shadow striker, which was Pele, to get forward in between. In this tactic, I actually use Coutinho and Neymar in this role interchangeably. In the tactic B, you'd see that the wide playmaker is also on attack duty here. The reason why this wide playmaker is on attack is because as much as a wide player on this other side is asked to stretch the pitch in his starting position, he is also required to come into the middle and try and help the shadow striker at some point. So that's where the confusion was in. Is he a winger or is he an inverted winger? I came to the conclusion that the role, either this role was outdated or the role has evolved in recent years. So it was a wide inverted winger or a wide playmaker that stayed out wide and did a lot of damage. So like I used for the tactic B, that's why after reading the details of this player's instruction, I ended up creating the tactic B using a wide playmaker with the attack duty, so he can also get in this role. As much as his starting position is to stay wide and stretch your position, when he has the ball, he's going to come inside and be in this region here. So back to the tactic A, the last player that we've not actually covered is the striker. The striker is a false nine, and for obvious reasons, he actually drops deep and allows the opposition defenders to follow him at some point and try and keep tabs on him, while leaving space for the shadow striker, which is Pele, to get forward. Is the same scenario here in the tactic B. Shadow striker and false nine. The false nine gets deep and creates room for the shadow striker to get forward and try and disrupt your position to defend and create chances and score goals himself. The team instructions were somewhat difficult to come across or to deal with or to create, in my opinion, because pressing was not really a thing back then. As much as teams used to try and win the ball back early, in modern football, pressing is really, really important. I don't know how important it was in the 1950s, but when I started creating this tactic, standard defensive line, standard line of engagements of what I started with, and then there was no pressing whatsoever, but we had a positive mentality. And for the first few games, like we showed you in the schedule, or like I showed you in the schedule, you can see that we won most of our games prior to the World Cup as well. We won quite a number of games with no pressing, but when it got to this more difficult games, I realized that the reasons why we lost this number of games here, these 3 games in particular, was because we weren't pressing the opposition as much as we needed to. Even though Argentina scored 2 goals from set pieces, I still felt that we could have done more. We could have engaged them a lot more. And going into the World Cup, the first few games of the World Cup as well, we actually did not over-press the opposition, and that's because the World Cup is a tournament that is very intense on fatigue as well. So I did not want to overwork my players with too much pressing, and that ended up costing us the entire tournament, because against Germany pressed us a whole lot and we couldn't really do much about their pressing. So we had to shift that mentality and ask the team to start pressing more. When we asked the team to start pressing more, we ended up playing against Egypt in a friendly, and then we put 9 past Egypt. So it made me think that if I had pressed Germany a lot more, we might have ended up winning the game. So, but that's still up for debate, and we're also up for testing in the next World Cup, whenever it is, 2024, 2022, 2026, right? 2026 World Cup. We'll see if eventually we try and win the World Cup with a bit more pressing. But that's basically how the tactic is set up. So after checking out the pressing, the next was let's just go through in transition phase as well. So in transition, the team was asked to move the ball faster and get into the opposition space a lot quicker. So counter press, counter, and distribute the ball quickly. Distribute the ball quickly because I want my goalkeeper to actually be a first line of attack somewhat, and then Alisson Becker and Ederson have good vision, good eccentricity as well. So distribute the ball quickly was an option that I opted for, and then no goalkeeper instructions whatsoever. They're allowed to do whatever they want because they have the intelligence to do so. In possession, the team's passing is slightly shorter. That's because of the mentality as well. We're not using shorter passing, or we're not using more direct passing. It's just balanced, and then the tempo is extremely high because I'm expecting the team to move the ball from back to front instantly. So that's what makes it all the more interesting anyway. And then run at defense instruction is also turned on, and then expression the team is asked to be more expressive and pass into space. The width, I ideally have to admit, could be narrower, but I just opted for fairly wide because I wanted to allow for more freedom and creativity in the team to also allow us cover most of the more areas of the pitch as well, even though we're playing the attacking center is actually through the middle using the shadow striker. In the final third, there isn't much instructions as well. There's no walk the ball into the box or shoot on sight or mix crosses. The team has just been asked to play naturally as it goes. And as I observe in-game experiences, I also tend to switch to low crosses as well, especially when you have Gabriel Barbosa playing as the false nine. Low crosses kind of work for him, but ideally I leave all these instructions blank. And then you can see that the play out of defense instruction is also turned on, even though the goalkeeper has been asked to distribute it quickly. The play out of defense here is not directly for the goalkeeper as well. This is for the central defenders. As you can see, play out of defense encourages the defenders to pass their way out rather than clear the ball or hoof it long. So if the central defenders do have the ball, they will look to patiently move it to more creative players or find that long ball to a more attack or to a player in a more attacking position as well. But they will not look to give away loose passes unnecessarily. That's the idea why I turned on play out of defense. So that's a summary of the tactic, guys, and I've created two versions of the tactic and I've shown you the results of how the tactic works out and how the philosophy was built. And I know this kind of looks like a 4-2-3-1 now, but I know this is 4-4-2. This has to be 4-4-2. Come on. Because the shadow striker is definitely playing as a striker as well. So that's the summary of the tactic, guys. The flat 4-4-2. That's how the Ginga system worked for me. And I'm obviously going to test it up until the next World Cup and see how far this new system turns out. But this is the first system and somewhat the old system that I use. And it's kind of like this is the second system that I've come up with so far, which is this one. Is the upgraded system and the final system that I used to get 9 past Egypt as well. So we're going to keep testing the tactic. And by the way, if you enjoyed this video, you found it useful, remember to leave a like on it and also to subscribe to the channel as well. And I'll leave these two tactics in the download description as well, so you can download the tactic for yourself and test it out for yourself and see what the loopholes might be, what might be interesting for you in the tactic, and let me know in the comment section as well. And I'm also looking to try this tactic with a club team. Perhaps I'll use the team in Brazil and see how well they function with the tactic. But until then, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for sticking out, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.